This 2024 AFC West Season Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL picks and projections are now live. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. Welcome everyone to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Here to get into our first division, the AFC West, for our season player props for the upcoming 2024-2025 NFL season. Definitely excited. This is my favorite time of the year, honestly. I know it's my co-host Chris's favorite time of the year as well. So we're going to go through all 8 divisions. We've put out the schedule tentatively. Things happen, life happens sometimes, but we're going to do our best to stick to the schedule that we did put out on our Twitter page there at the Propcast SGPN. So if you haven't already followed us there, do us a favor, follow us there, and you'll see the schedule and everything that's posted as far as the audio pods. And when we do go live, you'll get that alert as well on our YouTube page. So if you haven't already subscribed to the Propcast YouTube page, now would be a great time to do so. But joining me here to help me break down the first division here for the upcoming season, it's my guy ChrisBeCappin. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's up? Like you mentioned, man, it's an exciting time of the year. We got a little less than a month before official football season starts, and what better division started off with than the defending Super Bowl champion division, AFC West. We talk about Mahomes, we talk about the Raiders, Chargers. I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Yeah, look, last year, I know this was your first season on the Propcast doing the season-long player props. I know we had a fantastic season last year doing this, and hopefully we can continue that going into the season this year. And I tweeted this out when we put out the schedule and talking about the Propcast, and I said, look, the money's in the unders, and we could briefly discuss that, kind of our thought process on how we do these player props here. And when we first started this, about me, myself, and Dan started this about 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. Player props was something that was on the rise, and I think that it's getting into a market now where we're starting to see that for the player prop market, people getting more involved in player props, whether it's NFL, NBA, MLB, or the case might be, right? And it's just really fun to go through because there's just so many different betting menus that can go through, especially in the NFL. And we'll talk about that, as we do these division previews, but also during the regular season as well, as that you try to find that value that way, maybe where the market hasn't caught up on some of these players. And I think also, Chris, it's something similar to when we do NBA player props, is that we try to do our best to avoid the superstar players because we know the books are going to be paying attention to some of those players from a weekly basis. Maybe not a season-long player prop perspective, but at least from a weekly basis. But I will tell you this, and I'm sure Chris will test this as well, is that unders are honestly the way to go. In the 3 seasons that I've been doing this on the Propcast, on the season-long player props, 33-5 on the unders for season-long player props. So that I'll be upfront right now. Just do your best to find those unders throughout the regular season, because it's an injury, right? It's an injury away from you making your winning your bet or losing your bet. And a lot of these players, especially when you have the physicality of playing football, there's going to be times where a guy misses a game or two, and that honestly could just be the difference. Or God forbid they have those season-ending injuries and you win your bet that way. So we'll talk more about that as we get into it here. But Chris, I wanted to get your thoughts on what your kind of process is when you were looking at season-long player props here in particular. And, if you want to let our listeners know if you agree with me that the unders are the gold mine.
Absolutely. My thought process is very similar to yours. And I'm glad you slid me the cheat sheet last year when we first started this. And you said, Chris, it's going to be the unders. And for the people who didn't see the tweet, I think it was 33-5 is Munaf's bracket on these player props for the season long. And like you mentioned, a lot of people, just want to take overs, and sometimes defense is a part of the game as well. And I think, a lot of people don't want to root for the unders. It's not as sexy, but with an under, you're always winning until you're not. So, like you mentioned, not just the injuries, but a suspension, a team going in a different direction. All of those things impact, mid-season. All of those things kind of impact these player props, the season long total. So, when we see some of these what I would like to call inflated numbers, we are going to be looking towards unders for sure. So I know that that's the right logic based on the results that both a little bit for myself, but also a lot for you, just in the recent past over the last couple of years. Is under or almost nothing, unless, like you said, we spot some nice value in the market, depending on what we're looking at.
Yeah, 100%. And I say that going into this division where I have 2 overs, but I think it's definitely where maybe I may have found some value here on these overs. But again, like we mentioned, it's a lot of part of it is that injuries again are the biggest thing that can, again, just cash your bet or sometimes be the difference between winning and losing. All right, guys, before we do get into the player props here for the AFC West, let me quickly tell everyone about the Sports Gambling Podcast launched their 32 NFL team previews. And as a bonus, each team preview will include a code word. Submit the 32 code word phrase, and you could be the lucky winner who gets a $500 NFL Circa future bet. And make sure you guys subscribe wherever you do get your podcast. And also, don't forget about the SGPN app. All right, Chris. So the AFC West, obviously, like you mentioned, does feature the defending Super Bowl champions. That will be the Kansas City Chiefs, led by Mr. Patrick Mahomes. And I think I want to have a conversation here. So let me tell you the format if you are new to the show. What we do, go through every single division. We'll give you at least one quarterback player prop, and then we'll mix it up with skill positions, whether it's a tight end, running back, wide receiver, whatever you wanted to give out to the listeners that hopefully does cash to the window. But Chris, I'm going to start this, and I'm going to be honest. I think the quarterback conversation, because widely available when you were looking at this, and not too long before we got onto the show here, in this AFC West division, you only have one quarterback that was widely available, and that was obviously Mr. Patrick Mahomes. And I think it would be a service to our listeners if we just kind of go through the other quarterbacks in this division before we do get into the quarterback props here. So let's start with the LA Chargers. Justin Herbert dealing with plantar fasciitis. Didn't really see a lot available for his player prop markets as far as season long stats, whether it was passing touchdowns, passing yards. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you have the screen where you use religiously and you find the best value on some of these books where we can get the best number. I did see BetMGM had it at 3,600 and a half for Justin Herbert, but I went to look at the actual book and it was no longer there. That's due to the injury for Justin Herbert. Getting over to the Raiders, it seems like there is going to be a quarterback battle between who will be the starter between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell for the Las Vegas Raiders. So again, I didn't see anything really widely available as far as passing yards, passing touchdowns, and things like that for the Los Angeles Raiders. And I had my quarterback prop with the Denver Broncos, but right before we got on, Chris, the Denver Broncos come out and announce that Jarrett Stidham is going to be the starting quarterback listed on their depth chart right now. And I think everybody was under the assumption that it was going to be Bo Nix, and they did have Bo Nix available on a couple of books there for his season-long passing yards and also his passing touchdowns. So that one got pulled. At least I know on DraftKings. I didn't check the other books, but I'm pretty sure that those will get pulled for Bo Nix for the upcoming season here until we definitely know who the starter will be approaching the season. So I'll leave it at that. I know we'll talk about Patrick Mahomes here in a minute here, Chris, but any disagreement there? Anything that you're seeing otherwise from what I just mentioned, at least about the other three quarterbacks?
Not at all. This is I don't anticipate this being a too much of a fight for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and a lot of it, from a just overall team success, and a lot of it is the quarterback play. You got a rookie quarterback with in Bo Nix in Denver. And I think they're only favored in like 1 or 2 games this season. And Bo Nix, I think is going to be. I think he fits the system really well. I think he try to get the ball out of his hands. I did see him listed at, I think it was 17.5. Juice to the under minus 135 before we started the show. But like you mentioned, I think that those numbers have been pulled now. At least I'm trying to see if we have anything updated. And we picked a hell of a time to start right when the official, well, unofficial, I guess, depth charts have been released. So the books got to go in and clean up and do their homework as well. I'm not sure if it's still available on BetMGM right now, but I did see a under 17.5 of Bo Nix passing touchdowns.
Yeah,
which was kind of intrigued me just a tad bit. I think the number is kind of spot on. I know a lot of the rookie quarterbacks didn't throw for 18 touchdowns last season. I think your boy CJ Stroud did.
Yeah.
As far as rookies, and I want to say that was it. All of the other quarterbacks that were rookies did not throw for that many. Do expect Denver to be a little conservative. Not put Bo Nix out there to get his head taken off too much. So yeah, that was a tad bit intriguing, but like you said, that's gone. And I did check the Raiders as well, before we started, and it did look like Aiden O'Connell was going to get the nod over Gardner Minshew.
Okay.
At least to start the season. Yeah. But I mean, what does that mean? We could be in week 4, and see a quarterback change for the Raiders, especially given how difficult their schedule is to start. They got the Chargers to start. Then they play in Baltimore. Both of these games on the road. They got the Chargers and Ravens on the road. They come back home. One of the only of the 17 games that they are favored in on the full season. They get the Carolina Panthers at home, but then they got Cleveland. So that schedule is going to be difficult to start. And we could potentially see a quarterback change. Who knows how early with that system, and Antonio Pierce being there as a first official year as a head coach there, and a brand new offensive coordinator with Luke Getsy. I think Getsy is how you pronounce his name, coming over from Chicago.
So. Yep.
So yeah, I'm not, like you said, we got some quarterback competition in Vegas. Chargers with Justin Herbert is pretty interesting. Like you said, coming off the injury. Definitely not really looking for overs. And I wanted to get your thoughts, very quickly on Jim Harbaugh being the head coach coming in from Michigan. They also got the new offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, coming over from Baltimore. How do you anticipate the Chargers offense to be? We know that, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like Harbaugh is more of a balanced attack type guy, whereas the Chargers, I feel like we've seen more, air arsenal type plays. But then again, some of those skill positions are gone. When you think about the wide receiver group, when you think about Austin Eckler being in DC now, what are your thoughts on this offense in general, for the Chargers?
So my first inclination was to go in and fade Justin Herbert, and not really based off of the injury, just because it's everything for this offense is going to be new, right? And what I mean by that is that Mr. Reliable for Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen now gone, right, to the Chicago Bears. Austin Eckler also not there anymore for this Los Angeles Chargers team. And when you think about Greg Roman coming over from the Baltimore Ravens, what do you think? That they were a running team, that they were run first team. And I think that we may see maybe like a 45-55 split between the pass and the run for the Los Angeles Chargers, just also based off of the injury for Justin Herbert. And from everything that I'm reading is that they're saying that he's going to be ready to go for week 1 of the regular season. But I think that you probably want to rely more on the running game, but you also have 2 running backs in there that had a history of injuries, right? Gus Edwards, I think, is right now listed as the number 1 back there for the Los Angeles Chargers. And they also picked up J.K. Dobbins, who we know that he's been dealing with injuries as well. But you also take a look at Justin Herbert, Chris, throughout his career. with the Los Angeles Chargers, and he got drafted in the 2020 season. This is going to be his fourth different offensive coordinator in his career, and he just got drafted in 2020. He had Shane Steichen in 2020, and then he had Joe Lombardi for the 2021-2022 season, Kellen Moore last season, and then the season after that, this season, like you mentioned, is going to be Greg Roman. So there hasn't been really a lot of consistency at that offensive coordinator position, because when you have such turnover, these guys all have different philosophies and different ways of how they want to implement their offense and how they want it to look. And for Justin Herbert, as much as the slack that he's gotten because he hasn't had a lot of playoff success or regular season success, I honestly think that with Jim Harbaugh coming in here, we may see more of a running attack here. So my first inclination was looking at Justin Herbert's, at least his passing yards to go under this season. And I want to say I saw a number of 3,300 and a half passing yards for him, or I think it was like 3,400 and a half. But my first inclination was to take the under there, just because I feel like there's going to be more of a running attack here, Chris.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. You mentioned, first of all, how he's going to be coming off the injury. Second of all, new offensive coordinator Greg Roman. He was with the Commanders way back in the day. It feels like now, and that's of course when we ran the ball as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were a little more, get the ground game a little more oriented. That makes a lot of sense. I think I would agree with that. And we don't know the stat. We don't know if he's going to be able to stay healthy for this, for this season as well.
Exactly.
We know that, health has been a big key for Herbert in that entire offense, because it does kind of feel like he is the Chargers. At least a big part of what they do, like all quarterbacks are. But yeah, I like that. If I was, while you were talking, I was just trying to see if I could find, see if I know it's been taken down in most books, but I wanted to see if BetMGM still had it available, and I wasn't able to find anything on seeing if we could still fade Mr. Herbert, because he's been taken off the board on a lot of the other sports books right now.
Yeah. All right, Chris, before we get into more of the quarterback discussion here, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Hey, it's time to go streaking. That's with Underdog Fantasy, because they just launched their Underdog Streaks. Hit your first 2 pick'em entries and then go streaking. And if you can get a 11-0 run, you can win 1,000 extra entry. Plus, Best Ball Mania is now live with 15 million in prizes. They just added another college football contest for Best Ball. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure that promo code MACHINE. And we're also brought to you by Game Time. Hey, look, it's that time of the year. You probably want to get out to a sporting event with the NFL and college season right around the corner. But also, hey, guess what? Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down closer to game time. And I'm sure you've had those experiences where maybe you've used another ticket outlet and didn't have a great buying experience, or even when you got to the venue that you didn't have a great seat because you weren't able to see your view from the before you actually bought those tickets from that other venue. But that's why Game Time comes in clutch, because you can actually customize everything when you go into their app. You can see your a visual of what your seat is going to, or your seat is going to be, and what your view is going to look like, whether it's at a basketball court arena, whether it's at a football stadium, college football stadium, at a hockey arena, or maybe it's not sports, right? Maybe it's you want to get out to a comedy show. Maybe you want to get out to a theater show that's in your area. Let Game Time help you out with that, because again, they have last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and it's easy to find and buy MLB tickets for every kind of event in your area. View all seats in your venue. Like I mentioned, their lowest price guarantee, and they also have event cancellation as well. They also have last minute ticket deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. They also have zone deals. Save even more when you can choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. Game time ticket coverage also means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code SGPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and make sure you use that promo code SGPN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Chris. So let's start here with the quarterback. I know we're kind of continuing the conversation here off of Justin Herbert and what we talked about at the earlier in the episode. So
who is still available, for 3,600, like you said, on BetMGM still has him listed. Touchdowns as well, listed? Yeah, BetM 22.5 touchdowns, for Mr. Herbert this season. Number a little juice to the under minus 120 as well.
Okay, so I was going to come in and I wasn't going to really have one because number one, Patrick Mahomes, I didn't want to fade. I thought the numbers were a little too low for me to take the unders because, and again, it is Patrick Mahomes and we know what the man is capable of. I'll leave it at that. So it was either going to be the Bo Nix under for me at 2,850.5, or it was going to be the Justin Herbert. So I will take the Justin Herbert under there for him just based off of everything that we just talked about, right? Greg Roman comes in as your offensive coordinator, more of a guy that's, run heavy in his offense, dealing with the injury, and it could be something that's going to linger him season long. And us being basketball junkies, we know what plantar fasciitis can do for a basketball player, so that's something that we'll keep an eye on for Justin Herbert. I'll also throw out that once the books do post Jared Stidham on his season-long player props, I think this might be closer to the season. So maybe I'll mention in some of the later division previews that we do. That's another the under that I do like because, Chris, I like looking at some of these teams that have 2 or 3 guys in their quarterback room. And what does that mean? When you have 2 or 3 different guys, you don't have a quarterback. That means that guy's going to be looking over his shoulder thinking, hey, if I have 1 or 2 or 3 bad games, or if I give a 4-week span and I'm not doing well, the coach is going to make that switch here real quick, and that could be pretty much it for that player for that regular season. You cash your under. So just off the top, under on the Justin Herbert, and once Jared Stidham does get posted, because, again, like we mentioned unofficially, he is listed as a starter for the Denver Broncos right now before the preseason starts. I would look at either Bo Nix under or Jared Stidham under, just based off of the fact that those 2 guys may be looking over each other's shoulders for the next guy that may come in if they have a bad start here, Chris. So that's where I'm kind of at with the quarterbacks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. If I think you see a lot more of a balanced attack as well. And for all the reasons that you just kind of mentioned, you always want to the 2 things you mentioned that I wanted to kind of harp on just a tad bit. One, the quarterback controversy. If not only is the guy looking over his shoulder, but you also have, and this was apparent in watching the wide receiver on Netflix. You always got the coach getting lit up by these questions from the media, putting the pressure on him, right? So are we going to see, a quarterback change, or have you? I mean, they phrase the question so many different ways. Have you and the offensive, staff considered, looking in a different direction, or do you think this guy's prepared enough? It's all those different questions, man. So that's one piece that I wanted to mention as well. I think that's a big piece, and like you said, the quarterback room being a little too full, because if you don't have one, you got too many.
Yep. Where are you going for quarterback? Did you have anything for this division? I know it was a little difficult.
Yeah, I think I haven't locked anything yet in yet, but that Bo Nix, his under 17.5 passing touchdowns is what jumps out to me just a little bit more than everything else. I do think that he is going to be a little bit more of a game manager, in my opinion. I think that they're going to consistently run the football. It's only Sean Payton's second year there in Denver, and Joe Lombardi only his second year there as well. And I mean, we're talking about a team that's only projected to win 5.5 games this season. I do think that they're going to struggle. I think that they're going to struggle immensely on both sides of the ball. You got Jared Jeudy, who's now in Cleveland, so it takes away a little bit of that depth at the wide receiver position. And they have a pretty difficult schedule, especially to start. You got the Seahawks, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Tampa Bay, the Jets, Raiders. So, I mean, these are really good defenses to kind of start. If I just think that I like Bo Nix. I think that he definitely benefited from, being at Oregon and the whole COVID year, being able to be there for as long as he did. But I don't think that all of that is going to accumulate to him throwing at least 18 touchdowns this season. I do think, like I said, this will be a slow, methodical offense that won't have a lot of dynamic playmakers. He doesn't push the ball down the field a lot. At least he hadn't in his college career, and I don't think that he's going to do so this year either. I think that offense is going to be based off rhythm and timing, and I do think that that's going to be a little, shaky as well. A lot of the last thing I'll mention, is just to that point, is that a lot of what I've heard from these coaches and defensive coordinators so far in the training camps is that the biggest thing is they want to get out of they want to go into the season healthy. So there's not a lot of contact, not a lot of like really being physical with these guys. And I think that in itself, I don't know how much it does for the more seasoned guys and the vets, but the rookie quarterbacks that haven't been touched yet by some of these big guys, I know psychologically it can have a big impact if you haven't been tackled and touched up with just a tad bit. So for all of those reasons, I do like Bo Nix a little bit better at 17.5 to go under on his passing touchdowns here this season.
Yeah, honestly, couldn't talk you off. And a lot of times we're looking at these quarterbacks, especially rookie quarterbacks, and again, some of the veterans that they do have that maybe you're looking over their shoulder. I think it's sometimes a little bit unfair for some of these rookie quarterbacks that just kind of get thrown out there. I mean, I know we were fortunate with CJ Stroud down here because we didn't have much of a choice, but I mean, you've seen some of the guys. Patrick Mahomes had a full year, right, behind, I believe, Alex Smith at the time, and I think that's just one of the examples of how it can pay dividends for you. I'm not saying all these guys are going to be Patrick Mahomes, but I think it's different when you go from the college level to the NFL level and just having a year to sit and learn the NFL ways because it's completely different than college. So I think that, for some of these guys, I think it's a little bit, it's a little bit difficult, just making that transition from college to the NFL. All right, Chris, let's get into our skill position player props here for the season. And you want to lead us off? Where are you going with some skill position guys here for the AFC West?
No, I want to hear from you. Let's go. I'm gonna put you on the seat first. Yeah, you go first.
All right. So I'm going to go to the Kansas City Chiefs side, and I'm looking at Isaiah Pacheco to go over on his rushing yards, and that's at 900.5 rushing yards. And again, I know I did all the touting at the beginning of the episode about taking unders, but I feel like this number was a little low for Isaiah Pacheco. Number one, obviously everything is based off of health, but you take a look at his first two seasons with the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Back in 2022, where it was his rookie season, he played in all 17 games, had 170 attempts for the Kansas City Chiefs there, finished the season with 830 rushing yards on 4.9 yards per carry, about close to 50 rushing yards per game. The official number was 48.5. Let's go back to last season. He did miss a couple games last year. He only played in 14, but he ran for, 35 more attempts year over year. And his attempts per game went up to 14.5 per game. And he finished the season with 935 rushing yards on 4.6 yards per carry. So what is that telling us, Chris? That he's going to be obviously the feature back for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that we'll see more of a balanced attack this year from the Kansas City Chiefs because, again, Patrick Mahomes, he's already in that conversation of the greatest all time. And to some people, he may be the greatest of all time. I couldn't talk you off of that because we've seen what he's done already throughout his career. But we've seen the way that Isaiah Pacheco plays the game, right? He's a downhill runner. He runs with a lot of, I don't think anger is the right word, but he's a downhill bruising type of back. And when he gets that contact, he'll bounce off of that contact. He could turn it into yardage for you, for a guy like Isaiah Pacheco. So if he, again, plays anywhere from 14, 15, 16 games, anywhere from at least a minimum to 14 to 17, I know he's going to get the carries for this team. And we know with the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris, is that when they have the lead in that late fourth quarter, what do? You're Patrick Mahomes. You're not throwing the football. You're turning the ball. You're getting the ball. You're turning around and you're handing it right off to a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, who I know can rack up the yards and get those first downs for you. So I think that's going to be a big thing this year for Isaiah Pacheco. So I took the over 900.5 rushing yards for Isaiah Pacheco as my first skill position player prop here with the Kansas City Chiefs here, Chris.
Yeah, I mean I think that makes a ton of sense. You mentioned that force that he runs with. If I think that's just the underratedness, right? He was often overlooked. Just in the draft in general, having to come in and really get it out the mud. And you mentioned the thing that I like about and I respect about Pacheco so much is him being able to bounce off those tackles and to continue to run. So love that. Comes up big in the big plays and if we expect the Kansas City Chiefs to bounce back offensively here, then we do think that they'll be playing with the lead because a lot of the times last season they struggled. The Chiefs weren't necessarily the Chiefs until they turned it on late. But we got to remember at one point in the season they were 8-5 and potentially could miss the playoffs. And then they kind of got hot. So I completely agree with you on the Pacheco look. I think 950 to 1,000 yards is not out of the realm of possibility at all for him.
All right, Chris, take us to number one. Where are you going?
So I'm doing the unthinkable. If I'm gonna go look at Travis Kelce, and I'm going under. I'm going under specifically.
I'm glad you are because I was honestly considering this. I'm gonna let you finish the handicap,
Yeah.
but I have something interesting, or not interesting, but I think funny to mention. But go ahead.
Yeah, just we kind of talked about we kind of briefly teased it the other day, but Travis Kelce is on the latter stage of his career.
Yeah.
A lot of the reasons why the Kansas City Chiefs struggled last season. And when you say struggle, you got to break it down and say where did the Kansas City Chiefs really struggle at? They struggled offensively. They really struggled on early downs, first and second downs, putting Patrick Mahomes in a not the greatest position on third downs, and they didn't score the football as much. We saw that their defense played a lot better throughout last season. So what do they do to help ensure that things don't happen that way again? Their wide receiver group was pretty poor last season. I think 19th rated unit overall. And they go out, they add Hollywood Brown, they draft Xavier Worthy, and I think both of those guys are going to be just big pieces anyway, and they're going to be instrumental, in this team's success this season. So I like it from that perspective. I also just feel like there's been a decline for Travis Kelce. We know that, that's the Taylor Swift stuff that's going on over the last year. But it's been a little bit of a decline recently in Travis Kelce's play. Not to say that he can't go out there and play as great as he did, when they really needed him. He had those games where he had 7 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. But I just think that the numbers are a tad bit too inflated. And while I think the Kansas City Chiefs will bounce back offensively this season, I don't necessarily think it's going to be Travis Kelce. I think he'll be a possession receiver. I just don't think that he'll rack up all the yards. So his numbers, like I said, just a tad bit inflated, under 900 yards, which is something that he hasn't done in the last 2 seasons. Playing 16 games in both of those seasons is what I'm most interested in, but you can also get him under 7.5 touchdowns. And he hasn't had 8 touchdowns since the 2017 season. So I don't think that he'll get back there. I'm thinking about taking this, and putting the unit and just splitting it right down the middle on the under receiving touchdowns at 7.5, which I can get at Caesars, and under 900 yards at -130 over on DraftKings right now as well. I still think that he is going to get the receptions. I do think that that's going to be there. But if we expect bigger, like the big plays to be made from Patrick Mahomes and some of those passes not to be dropped like they were last season from some of those wide receivers, I think that the offense takes the top off the field. Travis Kelce doesn't even get a chance to even rack up all of those receptions either, because we see more big plays converted for this Kansas City offense. So I'll go Travis Kelce here, and I'll go under 7.5 touchdowns, and I'll also go under on his 900.5 receiving yards here.
And Travis Kelce was someone, I should say, that I was also considering taking unders on, and more so it was the yardage. But I feel like it was a tad bit low for him at 900.5. But like you mentioned, that I think that number one, this is his 11th season in the NFL as a full-time starter. So that mileage is at a point going to add up for Travis Kelce. I think there was moments last year as well where they maybe give him a game or two off just to kind of give him a week off. And I think just the miles are racking up for a guy like Travis Kelce. But you also mentioned the pieces around him as well, right? We're not sure exactly what the status of Rashee Rice is going to be because he's dealing with the legal stuff off the field right now. But we'll see if he's able to be number one, making the roster, or even going to be able to play this year for this team. But you mentioned why we've seen a lot of things on social media and on Twitter and coming out of training camp, at least I should say, about Xavier Worthy being a great weapon now for Patrick Mahomes in that offense. You mentioned Hollywood Brown as well. Maybe, that's a guy that you can really utilize in your offense as well. And I mentioned Isaiah Pacheco. I feel like there'll be more of a reliance there. So I'm not saying that Travis Kelce have to take a back seat here, but Travis Kelce, I think from a yardage perspective, I think this might be the year where there is a little bit of a decline for him as well. And I just went in, Chris, and I Googled whenever I was looking up these player props to see if there's any, injury news or any things that I did miss. And I just typed in Travis Kelce into Google. It's nothing but ties with Taylor Swift. And the headlines are, did Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift get engaged over the summer? Are they engaged? Nothing related to football. You had to scroll down a little bit until you actually got to some football stuff about Travis Kelce. So I'm not saying it's going to be a distraction for him for this upcoming season with Taylor Swift. I mean, we saw that hoopla last year and all that. But yeah, I think this might be a year where we do see a little bit of a decline here. I remember the first season we did the Propcast, I took the under on Patrick Mahomes on his passing yards, and that I think it was like 5,000 yards at the time, and it barely got there for me as well. So it makes you a little bit nervous taking the unders on some of these guys, but I think the handicap that you get for Travis Kelce makes a whole heck of a lot of sense.
Don't forget about that. Don't forget about that $100 million podcast that he got with his brother as well. That they're trying to get a deal for.
That too, man. Look, and let's not forget, right? Travis Kelce did consider retirement as well at the end of last year when they did win the Super Bowl. Before he did say he was coming back, I think it was at the parade. To make it, I think 3 in a row now for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think that if they're able to win it this year, I think it could in fact maybe be the last year of Travis Kelce. Because what else is there left for him to do, right? I mean, like you mentioned, he'll have that podcast money. He'll have if they win it this year, 4 NFL champions, surefire Hall of Famer, possibly engaged to the biggest pop star in the entire world, and Taylor Swift. So I'm not sure there's a whole lot that Travis Kelce needs more, but we'll definitely keep an eye on it for sure. All right, Chris, before we continue the conversation here for the AFC West, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Rhythm. Football season is here, and the college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting models or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. Decide what stats matter the most to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around it. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm uses AI projections from MIT data scientists. Rhythm already has you covered for the NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. So claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're also brought to you by the greatest sports handicapping contest in the world, the Circa Survivor and the Circa Million. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Imagine the regret you'll feel if you win your office survivor pool but didn't enter the Circa Survivor. Don't have a trip booked for Las Vegas yet before football? Ultimate Contest Weekend is a great time to go out, hang with Ryan and Sean, and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sports book in the world, August 22nd through August 24th. Use promo code SGP15 to save 15% off your hotel room for sign-up weekend. Sign up in person at Circle Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We also have a deal with football contest proxy.com to save you $50 off, but make sure you use that promo code SGP when you sign up with them as a proxy. So again, go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save $50 off with promo code SGP. All right, Chris, let's continue the conversation here. Let's get into our third player props here for the AFC West Division, and I am going to go over to the Raiders side. And I thought this number was a tad bit too low, despite the quarterback situation there. And I'm looking at Devontae Adams on the over on his receiving touchdowns at 6.5. And you can find this, I believe, on DraftKings at 6.5 right now. So we take a look at what what he's done throughout his career. I'm not even going to mention the Green Bay Packer numbers because he had a Hall of Fame future quarterback there with him. And it was able to just absolutely crush these numbers. But in his 2 seasons with the Las Vegas Raiders, first season back in 2022, he had 14 receiving touchdowns, and then last year he finished with 8 receiving touchdowns for the Las Vegas Raiders. And again, we know the rumors that, I mean, not the rumors, but what Aaron Rodgers said at the golf tournament that he would love, or he's looking forward to playing with Davante Adams sometime again. Is the possibility there that he does get traded to the New York Jets sometime at the season? Of course, that possibility is always going to be there, but I'm still comfortable with him, at least with the Raiders, getting the touchdowns, because I know Gardner Minshew, he's a proven guy, right? He's going to find the wide receivers. He's a gunslinger. He likes to throw it all over the field. And we know just from a pure target perspective that it's going to be there for Davante Adams. I mean, you just look at the pure targets that this guy got over the last 2 seasons with the Raiders, with the quarterback play that they did have in those 2 seasons. I know Derek Carr was there, but last season with the mix of quarterbacks that they had there with Aiden O'Connell and those guys and Jimmy Garoppolo, 180 targets in 2022. That was a career high. And then last season in 2023, 175 targets for Davante Adams. So I know him being a guy that's a great route runner, creating separation. He's going to get the touchdowns for sure, but also I know the targets are going to be there for him as well for Davante Adams. So the number of 6.5 here was a little bit conservative for me here, Chris. So Davante Adams over 6.5 receiving yards to round out my AFC West player props here, my man.
Yeah, Devontae intrigues me a lot here, because he is, I think still a great wide receiver, even though this is also year number 11 for him, I think, as well. Devontae is on the way out, and I was trying to find a way to fade him, but like you said, his number is a tad bit too low. I even looked at his receiving yards, he's only sitting at 1,000. You would have to go back. Yeah, I mean, it's super wild. Yeah, exactly. 2019, where he only missed it by 3 yards to find the season where he did. I mean, so the books are expecting some drop off. Do I expect it to be that much of a drop off? I'm not sure. And the reason why I say that, is because when Antonio Pierce came in last season, I think they were 3-5 after they fired Josh McDaniels. And I think they ended up 5-4 down the stretch, and one of those wins coming against the Chiefs as well. So my point being that when Antonio Pierce took over, I mean, really, they just ran the basketball. They ran the football every time, and when they didn't run it, Aiden O'Connell was looking for none other than Davante Adams. So I couldn't talk myself into him, especially with just how much he demands the football. You mentioned those targets last season being 175, which is absolutely insane, which is also 5 off the number from the year before, which is also insane. So while I think there could be a little bit of a decline, especially if he ends up with 2 quarterbacks, because Aiden O'Connell doesn't get it done, and then Gardner Minshew gets in there. I couldn't quite get there with taking the under, so I could only and then this one brings me back. I don't know if you remember the episode last year, but when we were talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I talked about really wanting to fade who was Mike Evans. guy, Mike Evans, and go under because I didn't believe it, as much in that offense, and the number was just a tad bit too low. I think he went over. That was one that bit me in the butt pretty early. So I do feel like the books are just a little sleep in this one. If I think 7.5 would have scared me off, as far as the over, but 6.5 does feel like it's pretty conservative by the sports books here.
Yeah, again, we'll see again if he does finish the season with the Las Vegas Raiders there. But again, not a lot of great things I'm hearing coming out of Raiders camp right now. But like you mentioned at the top of the show, it seems like that this division is obviously going to run through the Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, Chris, where are we going for your next player prop?
You know what? I really couldn't find one that really stood out to me. I wanted to get there with Jacoby Myers. I think I was looking at his touchdown prop just because his number's been a tad bit too low. I think Devontae Adams does garner a lot of attention. So he was somebody I had on my list. I know he's coming off a season where he went up and over the number last season. But like I said, the inconsistency of the quarterback play there, and just not, I'm not sure if who I think it'll be Aiden O'Connell who starts at quarterback. I'm not sure if he finishes or not, so that kept me off
Yeah.
of Jacoby Myers, even though I think, like I said, Devontae Adams does, he'll get double team, he'll get triple team, as you talked, as we kind of saw, if you watch the wide receiver on Netflix. I think the defenses will definitely be shaded towards him just a tad bit. And the Raiders will be, they'll be run heavy as well. I think they were number one team in the NFL as far as rushing after Antonio Pierce came over as well. But there's a split in that backfield as well. There's no Josh Jacobs now, and you got Zamir White back there, who I think will be keyed in on early in the season, which could slow him down. So I thought about looking towards his unders on his rushing yards. That number was only 650 and a half, I think it was. Couldn't quite get there. Although I will say that if they are down, if we anticipate that the Raiders will be playing from behind like they did a lot last season, especially if their defense isn't forcing turnovers, then I could see, a world where the Raiders have to play a little bit more, non-conservative and spread the ball out a little bit more and not be able to rush the ball as much as they want to. So I considered both of those. I didn't really like anything for the Broncos, even though I do understand that I couldn't really find the numbers I was looking for the Broncos. They have some running back controversy there as well. When you think about having two, I wouldn't say dynamic, but when you have two good running backs, in their backfield with, I know Madison he'll be trying to get his fair share of snaps and potentially went out that running back number one position over there. So this division just felt a little off to me. Like I said, I think I like Travis Kelce a little bit more. And I'll take that bet and split it, like I said. So that'll be two bets for me, and then I'll go Bo Nix under his 17.5 passing yards here.
Yeah, I think there were outside of the Chiefs, I just feel like there's a lot of question marks still with the rosters of the other three teams, right? With the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Raiders. I think more so, obviously, like we talked about at the top of the show, at that quarterback position. And we'll see. I think Justin Herbert will start the season. But again, how much is that injury going to affect his play? And then obviously that's something that's going to affect wide receivers too, right? Like if they're going to be more of a run heavy offense, then you look at guys like Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins for the Los Angeles Chargers. And then for the Raiders, again, quarterback question mark there. It looks like it is going to be Aiden O'Connell, but again, when you have a veteran backup like Gardner Minshew, who's made his way around the league here, and obviously last year being with the Indianapolis Colts, that's a possibility that he could end up as a starter there maybe by week 4 or 5. And then with the Broncos as well, like we just talked about before we started recording this episode, that they had Jared Stidham listed as the first quarterback on their depth chart, on their unofficial depth chart, and then it's Zach Wilson, and then it's Bo Nix. So it's a little bit tough, especially looking at least the AFC West division. So maybe we got the toughest division out of the way first before we do get to the other 7 divisions here for our season player props for the upcoming season. All right, that's going to pretty much do it here for the AFC West division here for our season player props. 1 division down, 7 more to go here. Chris, anything else you want to mention, at least for this division, before we wrap it up?
No, I think like you mentioned, there's just a lot of uncertainty, right? Especially right now. We try to do these shows a little earlier, try to get ahead of some of these numbers. But like you said, it's a lot of competition going on right now. And it's just kind of to be determined right now. But we got some fun ones coming up that I'm excited to talk about for sure.
Yeah, definitely make sure you guys are keeping up with all the news as well, right? Because again, with the NFL, and I think it's any league that really honestly doesn't sleep. So again, make sure you guys again keep up with the news, tap in with us, and like Chris mentioned, make sure you get the best number. I think that's obviously the biggest thing about when we talk about season player props, because you can see a discrepancy of 50 yards on one book and 50 yards to another book, right? And that sometimes could be the difference between you cashing a bet and losing a bet, and sometimes that's sometimes the fine print of it. But again, definitely with anything, get the best number, especially when we're talking about player props, because if we are locking up your money for 5-6 months for some of these bets, that you want to make sure you get the best number. So we'll talk about that more as we get some more of these divisions. We'll be back on Thursday for our next division preview. I believe it will be the NFC West for our next division season-long player props. Look out for us then. Make sure you guys follow my guy Chris over on X. That's at ChrisBeCappin with 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. More importantly, make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel for the Propcast. So again, like I mentioned, we'll be going live for our division previews as well as during the regular season. Appreciate everybody listening to us. If you haven't already, leave us a rating and review. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.